The people of the European Union are called to choose their representatives at the European Parliament on 26 of May. How exactly does that work? Let's focus on it together. 350 million voters from 28 different countries will decide who are going to be their faces in the Parliament of the European Union. These are the second largest democratic elections in the world. Each country is going to send MEPs, Member of European Parliament. MEPs are selected by proportional representation called the town system. Voters will be asked to choose one single party, and the number of elected candidates from each party's list depends upon the proportion of votes cast. The number of MEPs allocated to a country is related to the size of its population. Countries with bigger population like Germany or France are given more seats than smaller countries. For instance, Germany, the biggest one, will have 96 seats. Romania will have 33 seats. Greece, 21. While Finland, 14 seats, and Lithuania only 11 seats. But what can be expected out of these elections?
This European parliamentary campaign and elections in general is a bit different in comparison to the previous ones. And the difference is lying in itself EU's political system, because opposition parties, very Eurosceptical parties, already have seen the outcome of the Lisbon Treaty, because during the last decade, what we have seen after 2009, after implementation of this recent Lisbon Treaty, it's the growth of European Parliament's political ambitions and political powers. And of course, all of this was enabled by the member states, but generally we have seen a shift within EU's political system, and now we have a kind of system similar to bicameralism, quite more similar to United States of America. Myself, I'm having quite many research and interviews from various embassies and diplomats, and they are saying that there are some possibilities, but also some threats, existing threats coming from this shift, from this trend, because in fact it's enabled European Parliament to become equally important legislative power as Council of Ministers, other institutions representing member states. So this shift, a very important shift within EU's political system, also have been recognized by Eurosceptical groups. And they seen that if they're gonna win more seats in the European Parliament by having, coalition across Europe, they might also make some shifts and propose their political agenda within European Parliament. And European Parliament, by having this equally important, legislative power, can block political decisions. So that is why we see such a big and quite diverse political debates, political competition or even political fight, if you want to use this word. And so what is the difference? I've mentioned that the elections is different. The difference is that even by highest, political figures of European Union, like President of European Commission Jean-Claude Juncker or President of European Council Donald Tusk, they are saying that we have to inform the people that the populism is growing and that the people should be careful and should take into account whether the promises given by populism will be actually implemented. Yeah, because that is why they usually populist, because they give promises, they never is implemented. So what we see, the shift is existing, that political fight now exists between traditionalists and kind of populists. While during the previous elections, we have seen more these political competition or political fight between right-wingers, left-wingers, between traditional political parties or the liberals. Now the shift is between kind of traditionalists and populists. And of course they are very diverse in both sides. Even if we discuss these Eurosceptical movements, let it take, for example, in France, Marine Le Pen's political party, or in Germany, Alternative for Germany, in Italy, in Poland. The common denominator is they are Eurosceptical, but their Euroscepticism is very different, and that is why up to now I don't see kind of coalition, pre-existing coalition before parliamentary elections, European parliamentary elections. So that is why they are divided, and there is different Euroscepticism. Even today, we have Eurosceptical political groups in the European Parliament, but they do not attain that majority, And now the threat exists that it's predicted that the growth of these populist and very Eurosceptical political groups, so the growth of their seats in European Parliament. And of course, if it reach half, I don't know, I can't predict, it's very difficult. But again, the threat exists that in the fact that European Parliament is not a consultative body, which was historically. Now it's equally important legislative body to the Council of Ministers. Yes, and so what is more, following this thought about different Euroscepticism, so I would say that there is an existence of different Euroscepticism, not one kind of very, I could say, equally recognizable, but it's a different kind of Euroscepticism, while, let's say, ones are more Eurosceptical towards a specific EU political decisions, such as migration issue. Others want to entirely destroy the whole system of the European Union. And again, there are different point of views towards, for example, European Union's relations with Russia. That is why we have not seen any big consensus between, for example, Italian, this Eurosceptical political party, and Polish, because they have, even though they might have some common issues concerning some internal EU political, tendencies or directions, but they have different point of views towards EU's external politics, towards EU relations with such countries as Russia. Differently to national parliaments, in European Parliament we do not have a permanent parliamentary majority or opposition. So there is, they form or create position and opposition for almost every session. So there is still, they are divided. So this is the biggest difference in comparison to national parliaments.
Indeed, all the projections of results seem to show a strong breakthrough of Eurosceptical sides. Does the public opinion feel affected, interested, or concerned?
Manau, tai turi didelę įtaką, nes vis tiek ES turi įtakos Lietuvos politikos valdymui, tai manau, kad tie žmonės, kurie yra išrenkami Lietuvos, tai vis tiek turi įtaką taip pat Lietuvai, nes vis tiek žiūri tos pačios Lietuvos interesų. Tai manau, tai tikrai jie yra svarbus ir turi įtakos.
I'm actually very interested in the coming Europarliamentary elections because I'm aware that we receive most of the funds from European grants, and I really want that the party that I'm going to choose for the Europarliamentary elections, to go into European Parliament, to represent my interests in the European Union. Because, for example, Romania got for the 2014-2020 period almost 40 billion euro in European grants that we don't have to give back. So it's really important for us to pay attention to the Europarliamentary elections.
Well, I do look at it, and I am concerned a bit, mostly because I am a resident of Lithuania, and it does affect me. My wife is Lithuanian. My daughter is half Lithuanian. Certainly the referendum that just failed regarding dual citizenship will affect her in 15 years. While I can't vote in things like the presidential elections or the parliament elections, they do affect me in that I can't get medicine for my daughter. I can't, there's certain things that I cannot do any longer because of the process of government. And so it absolutely affects me. I just wish there was something more that I could do about it as a resident. I'm actually wondering, especially if it becomes right-wing, I'm wondering if there's going to be any type of reactionary measures towards the United States. I know they've already floated ideas of increasing visa restrictions for United States travelers, which would absolutely affect me. Trade agreements, I think, are going to absolutely be interesting. Already, with Brexit, again, right, it comes down to my child. There's British-made medication that I can no longer get because it can't be imported. And so I think that trade restrictions are going to be a big topic, and I think that depending on who comes in and what their agendas are and who's paying them, you're going to see trade issues come up.
Well, I'm aware of them, but I'm not really interested at the moment because I have quite a lot of midterms to prepare to, a lot of presentations, tests, and I don't really have the time to search for information about what's going on. So, basically, I'm aware of it, but I'm not really, I don't really know much about it.
As we understand, the 2019 elections are raising new questions and issues.
I would say that topics such as migration, it's gonna be again, horror's message. And also right now we have more and more discussions concerning unemployment issues. It's still a big issue in southern, EU member states. Also, this existing gap between the rich groups and the poor groups. It's gonna be, I think, the most important messages which will circulate the debate. And plus, again, nationalism versus federalism. It's kind of traditional issue, but for example, in Lithuania, we see within Lithuanian Euroscepticism, we really see this debate. Nationalism versus federalism, that we have to regain, sovereignty, retake from European Union without any real content, and this is populism. This is populism.
I mostly base my decision when it comes to choosing the party that I want to go further in the European Parliament on green energy. That's what I'm really interested in the most, because I'm aware that we need to pay more attention to that. But I also am interested into people that would properly represent the political interests that Romania has, because the Romanian political environment right now is really screwed in a way. So I would really like to have people there that would really show that Romania can do way better on a political level, you know. But it would be mostly like green energy and maybe like economical issues, like economical growth. Yeah, I'm most interested in those.
I think fear-mongering is huge. I think the extreme right-wing conservatives are using fear to manipulate the populace, much to the detriment of the populace and much to the advancement of their own pocketbooks. You look at what's happening with Brexit, where people absolutely voted against their own best interests because they were afraid of foreigners coming in. And ultimately, it's like what they voted to do will affect them so much more than it will affect the amount of foreigners that actually do enter the country. And so you see that with a lot of politicians. You see it here, with people talking about the Poles or the other immigrants coming in, making it a very scary proposition. And while I can't necessarily talk about it too much here because I don't speak the language, so while my wife watches the news and will relate certain things to me, I don't get it all, and I certainly don't get the linguistic nuance of what they're saying. I do see it in America, that wonderful idea of the national emergency of the immigrants coming up with the border wall, which existed only during the elections. And then as soon as the elections passed, that national emergency kind of vanished. And so I absolutely see that conservatism, religion, and extremism, especially when it comes to fear-mongering and othering, is absolutely going to define the coming elections for this year and probably for the foreseeable future. And it's kind of a no pun intended, it's a scary proposition. And of course, the populace, as a teacher, I can tell you that most students are not taught critical thinking. They're taught to accept everything at face value. And so when they get these fear-mongering ideas, they don't look at them critically. They don't look at the details. They don't look at the facts. They just look at what they're told, and they're told it very convincingly, and therefore they believe it. And once they believe it, it becomes very, very hard to change their mind, and puts them and everybody else into a bad position. My shame, I haven't followed the EU elections. I don't know what's going on. But from what I gather, I think those are going to be some of the big ones. That, and I think immigration policies. I think there's going to probably be some sort of EU immigration policies that are going to come up when it comes to, especially when it comes to Muslim countries. And the people that are trying to get away from Muslim extremism are going to be lumped in as Muslim extremists, and I think that's a problem. Having been raised Jewish, having a Jewish heritage, and knowing that, in the late 30s and early 40s, Jews were being turned away from every port because nobody wanted to deal with those immigrants. Those people trying to run away from death and destruction, and I'm seeing the same thing happen now. And it's scary, it's terrifying, and I think in 50 years' time we're going to look back on this and just hang our heads in shame as to what we did.
Manau, jie nėra tokie aktualūs kaip, pavyzdžiui, prezidento rinkimai ar, pavyzdžiui, buvo referendumai, bet vis tiek domiuosi, ypač, pavyzdžiui, socialiniuose tinkluose labai didelė ta informacijos klaida, tai tenka domėtis.
From elections to elections, the participation has been decreasing, and a low participation is feared this time too.
You know what is probably the biggest issue concerning European parliamentary elections, and always has been, is that it's still national politics which affects the result of European parliamentary election. It means that it doesn't matter how good Europarliamentarian you've been during your term of office. For example, during this term of office from 2015 up to this year, but your re-election entirely will depend on the popularity of your political party within national politics. This is this is what's happening every year. So the thing is that we may predict, but we have to follow the national tendencies in each of EU member state, because it actually follows these tendencies. So if we have, for example, that right now in Lithuania there are two most popular political parties, Conservatives and Peasants' Union. So we may also predict that probably these two parties will send more, representatives to European Parliament in comparison to other political parties. Even though it is the only one directly elected, European political institution, and the only one having direct legitimacy, but that legitimacy is given by far less than half of population. So it's again the question of how qualitative politicians will we get. And I think it is a task of both the national governments and also European political institutions to give more focus on communication channels and to communicate the message to the people that this institution is as much important as your national parliament, as your national government, because the decision of European Union affects, for example, 60% of public policies, and that is why it's so important to have very, high quality politicians who are, caring about political outcomes, about funding, about, having qualitative law.
Because they think that the most important elections are at a national level, and if you're there, the presence at voting times, but voting booths is still very small, and it's even smaller for the parliamentary elections, because people are not aware of how important they are. They're not aware of how much money we receive through European grants. They're not aware of how much the European Union is fighting to keep the balance in between the states. And they also undermine the power that the European Union has. So they just see it like a useless voting process.
I can't speak for Europe, but I can absolutely speak for America. The fact that we have become disenfranchised in that we believe that it doesn't matter. A vast majority believe that there's no difference. Which I disagree with completely. I think there absolutely is a difference. At this point, the millennial voter, right, the young voter, is going, what does it matter? Even if I vote for them, they're not going to do what I want, so who cares? They're going to do whatever they want anyway, so why should I bother voting? And so the people that do vote are the older voters, who are much more conservative, who are much more subject to fear, right? If you look at, the numbers of Brexit, overwhelmingly, the people that voted for Brexit are uneducated and older. And the younger, educated voters absolutely voted to stay. They just didn't have the numbers. There wasn't as many voters, and that's the way democracy works. So that, I think, that's the problem, is that we get this idea of it doesn't matter, that no matter who we vote for, they are going to vote for their best interest. They are going to vote for whatever lines their pockets through lobbying, through whatever monetary benefit they get. And the average person is left out in the cold, so who cares?
Since 2015, Brexit has agitated the minds and news. How has this process affected the campaign?
United Kingdom has 73 seats in European Parliament. It is one of the largest, country sending a very big number of representatives to European Parliament. So I would say that it's really a big harming effect with not knowing. And also, again, we see that in the United Kingdom the politics is very divided. So half of seats will be taken by very Eurosceptical politicians. So of course that again will affect European Parliament, but the thing is that these are just predictions.
Now, it is time to vote.